Listen, there wanderer of dreams, to a tale as old as the hills themselves, when the world was young and the stars sang softly over the 7 peaks of Rome. Let your heart drift to a time when the Tiber flowed like a silver thread through emerald valleys, and the air carried whispers of hope and destiny. This is a story of longing, of courage, and of hearts that sought to weave a future from the threads of discord. Close your eyes, let the world fade, and step into the mists of legend. The dawn over Rome. In the cradle of the 7 hills, where the Tiber curved gently through fields of golden wheat, the city of Rome stood in its infancy, a fledgling dream carved from stone and ambition. The Palatine Hill rose proud and solitary, its slopes draped in wild grasses that swayed in the morning breeze. The air was cool, scented with the sharp tang of time and the faint smoke of hearths kindled at dawn. The Sabine Hills. Far from the clamor of Rome, in the land of the Sabines, the hills rose in gentle waves, their slopes cloaked in forests of oak and chestnut. The air was sweeter here, heavy with the scent of blooming laurel and the distant bleating of goats. Streams wound through meadows dotted with wildflowers, white lilies and purple clover, their waters catching the light like scattered jewels. In a village nestled between 2 ridges, where the earth was soft and the sky vast, lived Livia, a young Sabine woman with eyes like the twilight sky and hair that fell in waves like the Tiber itself. Livia stood by a stream, her bare feet sinking into the cool, damp earth, her fingers tracing the delicate petals of a lily. The village was alive with preparations, for word had come from Rome, an invitation to a festival in honor of Neptune. Carts were laden with woven blankets, jars of honey, and wheels of cheese wrapped in cloth. Men sharpened their staffs, not for war, but for the journey, while women braided their hair with ribbons of saffron and blue. The elders spoke of peace, of new alliances that could strengthen their people. But Livia's heart was a tangle of curiosity and unease. She had heard tales of the Romans, wild men, they said, who built their city with iron and fire, their hearts hungry for conquest. Yet the invitation spoke of celebration, of shared songs under the stars. Livia wondered what Rome might be like, a city of stone rising from the wilderness, its streets alive with voices she had never heard. Her father, a stern man with a voice like rolling thunder, stood by the village fire, his brow furrowed. "The Romans seek more than friendship," he warned, his eyes scanning the horizon. "Their king, Romulus, is cunning. We must be vigilant."
Romus's heart was a tapestry of hope and shadow. He had forged Rome from the wilderness, a refuge for wanderers and outcasts, a place where strength and will could shape a future. Yet the city lacked the warmth of hearths filled with families, the laughter of children born to a new generation. "A city without women," he murmured to the wind, his voice low and resonant, "is but a shadow of its destiny." His gaze drifted to the distant lands of the Sabines, a people renowned for their grace and resilience, who dwelt in the rolling hills where olive groves whispered and streams sang over smooth stones.
In the quiet of the dawn, Romu's mind churned with a vision. He saw a Rome that stretched beyond its 7 hills, a city where the blood of many peoples mingled to create something eternal. But how to bring such a dream to life? The Sabines were proud. Their king, Titus Tatius, a man of wisdom and steel. To unite their peoples would require more than swords or treaties. It would require a bond of hearts. Romu's thoughts turned to a festival, a grand celebration in honor of Neptune, god of the springs that fed both Roman and Sabine lands. It would be a night of music, wine, and shared dreams, a chance to weave their fates together. Yet a shadow lingered in his heart. Would the Sabines trust his invitation? And could such a bold plan mend the emptiness of his city without breaking the fragile peace? As the sun climbed higher, painting the hills in gold, Romu descended the Palatine, his steps steady, but his mind alive with doubt. He passed the humble homes of his people, their walls of rough stone adorned with garlands of ivy. The market square bustled with merchants offering baskets of figs and jars of honey, their voices rising in a cheerful cacophony. A young boy, no older than 10, ran past, clutching a wooden sword, his laughter bright as the morning sun. Romu smiled, but the sight stirred a deeper longing. This city must live beyond me, he thought, and for that we need more than stone and steel. He called his advisors to the forum, a simple clearing where the Romans gathered to speak of their future. There, beneath an ancient oak whose branches stretched like arms toward the sky, Romu shared his plan. "We shall invite the Sabines," he said, his voice steady as the river's flow. "We shall feast and dance under the stars, and in that night we shall plant the seeds of a greater Rome." His men nodded, their eyes alight with hope. Though some exchanged wary glances, the Sabines were not easily swayed, and trust was a fragile thing. But Romu's heart burned with conviction. He would risk all for the dream of a city eternal. The Sabine hills. Far from the clamor of Rome, in the land of the Sabines, the hills rose in gentle waves, their slopes cloaked in forests of oak and chestnut. The air was sweeter here, heavy with the scent of blooming laurel and the distant bleating of goats. Streams wound through meadows dotted with wildflowers, white lilies and purple clover, their waters catching the light like scattered jewels. In a village nestled between 2 ridges, where the earth was soft and the sky vast, lived Livia, a young Sabine woman with eyes like the twilight sky and hair that fell in waves like the Tiber itself. Livia stood by a stream, her bare feet sinking into the cool, damp earth, her fingers tracing the delicate petals of a lily. The village was alive with preparations, for word had come from Rome.
an invitation to a festival in honor of Neptune. Carts were laden with woven blankets, jars of honey, and wheels of cheese wrapped in cloth. Men sharpened their staffs, not for war, but for the journey, while women braided their hair with ribbons of saffron and blue. The elders spoke of peace, of new alliances that could strengthen their people. But Livia's heart was a tangle of curiosity and unease.
She had heard tales of the Romans, wild men, they said, who built their city with iron and fire, their hearts hungry for conquest. Yet the invitation spoke of celebration, of shared songs under the stars. Livia wondered what Rome might be like, a city of stone rising from the wilderness, its streets alive with voices she had never heard. Her father, a stern man with a voice like rolling thunder, stood by the village fire, his brow furrowed. "The Romans seek more than friendship," he warned, his eyes scanning the horizon. "Their king Romulus is cunning. We must be vigilant."
But Livia's younger brother, a boy named Caius with a laugh like a bell, was alight with excitement. He tugged at her sleeve, his eyes wide. "They say Rome has walls that touch the sky," he exclaimed. "And their festival will have dancers and musicians and maybe even horses." Livia smiled, her heart softening at his joy, though a quiet fear lingered. She longed for adventure, to see the world beyond the hills, but the unknown was a shadow that followed her steps. As the sun dipped low, painting the meadows in hues of amber and rose, she knelt by the stream and whispered a prayer to the gods. "Guide us, and let this journey bring light, not darkness." In the heart of the village, King Titus Tatius gathered his people. He was a man of broad chest and piercing gaze, his beard streaked with silver, his presence like the ancient oaks that guarded their lands. His eyes held the wisdom of one who had seen both war and peace, and his voice carried the weight of a leader who bore his people's trust. "The Romans call us to their city," he said, standing before a fire that crackled under the evening sky. "We shall go, not as foes, but as neighbors. Yet we shall keep our eyes open and our hearts guarded."
The Sabines cheered, their voices rising like the wind through the trees. But Titus's heart was not so certain. He had heard of Rome's ambition, of a city that sought to grow beyond its borders. The festival could be a bridge to peace, or a trap. As he looked upon his people, their faces glowing in the firelight, he thought of Livia, his distant cousin, whose spirit was as bright as the stars. He hoped this journey would bring her joy, not sorrow. With a final nod, he sent runners to prepare the caravan, their footsteps fading into the night. The road to Rome. The morning of the journey dawned clear and bright, the air crisp with the promise of summer. The Sabine caravan wound through the hills, a ribbon of color against the green. Women in flowing robes of saffron and blue walked beside men carrying staffs carved with symbols of their gods. Children darted between the carts, their laughter mingling with the creak of wheels and the soft thud of hooves. Livia walked near the front, her eyes fixed on the horizon, where the 7 hills of Rome waited like silent sentinels.
The path led through forests where sunlight filtered through leaves, casting dappled patterns on the earth. Streams bubbled alongside, their waters cool and inviting, and the air was alive with the hum of bees and the trill of birds. Livia's heart lifted with each step, though a quiet voice within whispered caution. She thought of her village, of the stream where she had stood, of the lilies that would bloom in her absence. "Will I return the same?" she wondered, her fingers brushing the ribbon in her hair. Titus Tatius rode at the head of the caravan, his eyes scanning the hills for any sign of danger. His horse, a sturdy beast with a coat like polished bronze, moved with steady grace. He thought of Rome, a city he had never seen but had heard described in tales. Some spoke of its beauty, others of its hunger. His hand rested lightly on the hilt of his dagger, not out of fear, but habit. If Romulus seeks peace, he thought, we shall meet him as equals. But if he seeks to take what is ours, he will find the Sabines are not easily broken. As the caravan crested a final hill, Rome came into view. The city sprawled across the valley, its stone walls glowing in the midday sun. The Tiber wound through it like a silver thread, and the 7 hills rose like the backs of sleeping giants. Smoke curled from hearths, and the distant sound of voices carried on the breeze. Livia's breath caught in her throat, her heart quickening. It was rougher than she had imagined, a city still being born, yet there was a vitality here that stirred her. "This is Rome," she whispered, and for the first time she felt the pull of something greater than herself. Romulus, watching from the Palatine, saw the Sabine caravan approach. His heart swelled with hope, though the shadow of doubt remained. The festival would be the turning point, the moment when 2 peoples could become one. He turned to his men, his voice steady. "Prepare the city," he said. "Let Rome shine tonight, for the Sabines come not as guests, but as the future of our people."
Now, dear dreamer, let the tale unfold further as the stars align over Rome and the fates of 2 peoples draw closer. The Tiber whispers secrets and the night hums with possibility. Drift deeper into the legend. The Festival of Neptune. Rome glowed under the evening sky, its 7 hills crowned with torchlight. The Tiber reflected flames that danced like spirits, and the air carried scents of roasted figs, spiced wine, and olive oil. Stone walls, rough yet proud, were draped with ivy and laurel garlands. Tables groaned with bread, cheese, and fruits from the fields. Lyres and flutes wove melodies through the laughter, and dancers spun in circles, their shadows merging with the flickering light.
Romulus stood at the heart of the festival, his crimson cloak catching the firelight. His eyes, dark and steady, hid a storm of hope and doubt. He welcomed the Sabines with raised hands, his voice warm. "Tonight we honor Neptune, god of springs that bind our lands. Let us feast as one." His heart raced. The plan he had woven, a union of peoples through shared hearths, depended on this night. Yet he feared the Sabines might sense his deeper intent. Would they see his dream or only deception?
The Sabines entered in a procession, their robes of saffron and blue shimmering. Women wore flowers in their hair. Men carried carved staffs. King Titus Tatius led them, his silver-streaked beard framing a face both wise and wary. His eyes met Romulus's, and he nodded, hand resting lightly on his dagger. "We come in peace," Titus said, his voice deep as the hills. "Let this night strengthen our bonds." But his heart whispered caution. Rome was young, hungry, its walls too new to trust fully.
Livia walked among her people, her twilight eyes wide. Rome was rougher than her village, streets uneven, buildings half-formed, but alive. The market square pulsed with energy. Merchants offered honeyed cakes, children darted through crowds, and musicians played beneath a canopy of stars. A Roman woman pressed a cup of wine into her hands, her smile kind. Livia sipped, the warmth easing her nerves. This is no wilderness, but a city dreaming of greatness. Yet her father's warnings lingered, a shadow on her heart. As the night deepened, the festival grew wilder. Dancers twirled faster, their robes a blur of color. Flutes sang higher, and drums pulsed like a heartbeat. Romu moved through the crowd, his presence drawing eyes. He spoke with Sabine men, shared wine, laughed at their tales. But his gaze drifted to the women, their grace, their strength. They are the future, he thought, his heart heavy with the weight of his plan. He signaled his men, a subtle gesture, and they nodded, their steps silent as shadows. The moon climbed high, its light silvering the hills. Romulus raised his cup, his voice cutting through the revelry. "To unity!" he called, and the crowd roared, Romans and Sabines alike. But beneath the cheer, his men moved like a gentle tide. They approached the Sabine women, their words soft, their hands outstretched. "Come," they whispered, "see the heart of Rome. Walk with us under the stars." Livia felt a touch on her arm, light as a breeze. A young Roman, Gaius, stood before her, his eyes bright with earnestness. "Livia," he said, her name soft on his lips. "Will you walk with me? Let me show you our city's soul." Her heart fluttered, torn between caution and curiosity. His voice was kind, his smile unguarded. She nodded, her steps hesitant but drawn to his warmth. Around her, other Sabine women were led away, not with force, but with promises of homes, of futures, of a city that could be theirs. The night swallowed their steps, the music masking their absence. Livia followed Gaius through Rome's streets, past torch-lit walls and quiet gardens. He spoke of his dreams, a house filled with laughter, children running through fields. "Rome is young," he said, "but with you it could grow strong." Livia's heart stirred, yet she thought of her village, the stream, her brother's laugh. Could she belong here? The stars above offered no answers, only light. Titus Tatius stood by a fire, his eyes scanning the crowd. The laughter grew distant, the Sabine women fewer. A chill settled in his bones. He stepped into the shadows, counting his people. The truth struck like a stone. The women were gone. His hand tightened on his dagger, but he did not shout. "Romu," he whispered, his voice a low growl. "What have you done?" He gathered his men, their faces hardening. "The Romans have taken our sisters," he said, his voice steady but cold. "We return to the hills. We will answer this betrayal."
As the Sabines departed, their caravan a shadow against the hills, Rome grew quiet. Romulus stood alone on the Palatine, the festival's embers fading below. His plan had begun, but at what cost? The Sabine women, now in Roman homes, were not prisoners, but guests. Yet would they see it so? He thought of Livia, her twilight eyes, and hoped she might find a home here. "Forgive me," he whispered to the stars. "I sought unity, not strife." In the Sabine hills, Titus Tatius rode through the night, his heart a storm of anger and resolve. The forests whispered, their leaves trembling as if in warning. His people were proud, their women the heart of their villages. "Romulus will answer for this," he vowed, his voice lost in the wind. Yet a flicker of doubt lingered. Had he misjudged the Roman king? Was there a path to peace, or only war?
Livia lay in a Roman home, a simple room with a clay lamp flickering. Gaius had left her to rest, his words kind but heavy with hope. She stared at the ceiling, her thoughts a tangle. The festival's music still echoed in her mind, but so did her father's warnings, her brother's laughter. "What is my place now?" she wondered, her fingers tracing the ribbon in her hair. Outside, the Tiber flowed, its song a lullaby that spoke of beginnings, not endings.
The Tale of the Sabine Dawn, Part 3. The night fades, dear dreamer, and the hills of Rome hold their breath. The Tiber murmurs secrets, its waters weaving through a city caught between hope and shadow. Let the tale carry you deeper, where hearts tremble and destinies intertwine. Shadows of the Hills. The Sabine hills stood silent under a dawn sky streaked with gold and ash. Oaks and chestnuts whispered in the breeze, their leaves catching the first light, while streams carved paths through meadows of clover and lily. The air was sharp with the scent of dew and earth, but a heavier weight lingered, anger, like a storm gathering in the distance. In the village, nestled between two ridges, the fires burned low, and the Sabines gathered, their faces etched with resolve.
King Titus Tatius stood before his people, his broad frame steady as the ancient trees. His silver-streaked beard gleamed in the morning light, and his eyes, sharp as a hawk's, held both wisdom and fire. "The Romans have taken our sisters, our daughters," he said, his voice rolling like thunder over the hills. "They call it unity, but it is theft. We march to Rome, not for war, but for justice." His words stirred the crowd, men gripping staffs, women clutching woven shawls, their voices rising in a chorus of defiance. Yet Titus's heart was not so certain. He remembered Rome's eyes at the festival, earnest, almost pleading. Was this betrayal, or a desperate bid for peace?
He turned to the horizon, where Rome's 7 hills waited. The journey would be swift, the Sabines' anger a tide that could not be held. Titus mounted his horse, its bronze coat gleaming, and led the caravan from the village. The path wound through forests where sunlight dappled the earth, past streams that sang of quieter days. His thoughts drifted to Livia, her twilight eyes bright with curiosity. "Be safe," he whispered, a prayer to the gods. He vowed to bring her home, but a flicker of doubt gnawed at him. What if she had found something in Rome worth staying for?
Now, dear dreamer, let the tale unfold further as the stars align over Rome and the fates of 2 peoples draw closer. The Tiber whispers secrets, and the night hums with possibility. Drift deeper into the legend. The Festival of Neptune. Rome glowed under the evening sky, its 7 hills crowned with torchlight. The Tiber reflected flames that danced like spirits, and the air carried scents of roasted figs, spiced wine, and olive oil. Stone walls, rough yet proud, were draped with ivy and laurel garlands. Tables groaned with bread, cheese, and fruits from the fields. Lyres and flutes wove melodies through the laughter, and dancers spun in circles, their shadows merging with the flickering light.
She stepped outside, the morning air cool against her skin. The city was waking. Merchants called out, offering baskets of figs. Children ran through the streets, their laughter bright. A woman sang as she hung linen to dry. Livia watched, her twilight eyes softening. Rome was rough, its edges unpolished, but it was not the wilderness of her father's tales. Could she build a life here? The thought stirred hope, yet guilt followed. Her people were far away, their hearts heavy with her absence. She whispered a prayer to the gods, her voice barely audible. "Show me my path." Romu's burden. On the Palatine hill, Romu stood alone, the city sprawling below like a tapestry of stone and dreams. The Tiber glittered, its song a quiet reminder of the god's presence. He wore his crimson cloak, but his shoulders sagged under the weight of his choices. The festival had been a success, the Sabine women now part of Rome, but the cost was clear in the silence of the departing Sabines. He had hoped for unity, for hearths filled with new families, but had he sown only discord? He walked to the forum, where his men gathered beneath the ancient oak. Their faces were a mix of pride and unease. "The Sabines will return," one said, his voice low. "They will not forgive this." Romulus nodded, his heart heavy. "We did not take them by force," he said, his voice steady but strained. "They came willingly, with hope in their eyes. We must show them Rome is their home now." His men murmured agreement, but doubt lingered in their glances. Romulus felt it too, a fear that his dream might crumble before it could rise. He thought of Livia, the Sabine woman he had seen at the festival, her grace like the Tiber's flow. Gaius had spoken of her, his eyes alight with something deeper than duty. Romulus hoped she and the others would find a place here. He climbed the Palatine again, his gaze fixed on the horizon. The Alban hills shimmered in the distance, and beyond them the Sabine lands. They will come, he thought,
and we must be ready, not for war, but for peace. He prayed to Neptune, to Jupiter, to the gods of the hills, that his vision would hold. The Sabine March. The Sabine caravan moved swiftly through the hills, their banners fluttering like hawks' wings. Men carried staffs, their tips sharpened, though Titus had ordered no swords drawn. Women and elders followed, their faces set with determination. The forests parted before them, sunlight filtering through leaves, casting shadows that danced like spirits. Streams bubbled alongside, their song a faint echo of the peace they had left behind. Titus rode at the front, his eyes scanning the path. His heart burned with resolve, but a quiet voice whispered of alternatives. Could Rome and the Sabines find common ground? Or was this march the prelude to a wound that would not heal?
In the village, those who remained prepared for what might come. Elders lit fires in the temple, offering prayers to the gods of earth and sky. Women wove blankets, their hands steady despite their fears. A young boy, Livia's brother Caius, stood by the stream, clutching a wooden staff. "She'll come back," he said to the water, his voice trembling. "She has to." The stream offered no reply, only its endless song. As the caravan neared Rome, the 7 hills came into view, their slopes glowing in the afternoon light. Titus halted, raising a hand. His men gathered, their breath visible in the cooling air. "We seek our kin," he said, his voice firm. "We will speak with Romulus, and he will answer for this night." His heart hoped for words, not blood, but he knew the Sabines would not leave without their daughters. A city on edge. In Rome, word spread of the Sabines' approach. The market quieted, merchants pausing mid-cry. Women gathered children, their eyes darting to the hills. Romulus's men took positions along the walls, their shields gleaming, but their faces uncertain. The Sabine women, now in Roman homes, heard whispers of their people's march. Livia stood by her window, her heart pounding. Caius entered, his face pale. "Your king comes," he said softly. "We will protect you, but I pray it does not come to swords." Livia's eyes met his, her voice steady despite her fear. "My people are proud. They will not leave without us. But I see your heart, Caius. You dream of peace as I do." She stepped closer, her hand brushing his. "Let us find a way." Caius nodded, his hope rekindled, but the weight of the coming days pressed on them both. Romulus stood on the walls, watching the Sabine banners grow closer. The Tiber flowed below, its song unchanged, but the air felt heavier, charged with the promise of conflict. "We will meet them," he said to his men, his voice calm, "not as enemies, but as brothers. Let the gods guide us." His heart, though, trembled with the fear that his dream might end before it began. The hills of Rome stand watchful, dear dreamer, as the Tiber sings its timeless song. The air trembles with the weight of choices, and hearts beat between fear and hope. Let the tale draw you deeper, where courage rises like the dawn. The Valley of Shadows. The sun hung low over the 7 hills, casting long shadows across the valley where the Tiber curved like a silver thread.
The fields beyond Rome's walls were soft with green, dotted with wildflowers that swayed in the evening breeze. The air carried the scent of earth and distant olive groves, but a heavier silence lay beneath, as if the land itself held its breath. The Sabines had come, their banners fluttering like the wings of hawks, their steps steady on the path to Rome. The Romans stood ready, their shields glinting along the city's rough stone walls, their eyes fixed on the approaching line. King Titus Tatius halted his men in the valley, where the grass was cool and the Tiber's song a faint murmur. His horse snorted, its bronze coat catching the fading light. Titus's gaze was sharp, his silver-streaked beard framing a face carved with resolve. He raised a hand, and the Sabines formed ranks, their staffs planted firmly in the earth. No swords were drawn, but the air crackled with purpose. "We seek our kin," Titus called, his voice carrying across the valley like a distant storm. "Romulus, come forth and answer for the night of the festival."
In Rome, Romulus stood atop the Palatine, his crimson cloak stirring in the wind. The city below was quiet, its markets hushed, its hearths dim. He looked upon the Sabine ranks, their numbers strong, but their faces not yet hardened for war. His heart ached with the weight of his choices. "I sought a city united," he thought, "but have I built only a divide?" He descended to the valley, his men following, their shields lowered but ready. The Tiber flowed between them, a silent witness to the moment that could shape Rome's fate. Romulus faced Titus across the field, their eyes locking. The Roman king raised his hands, palms open. "Titus Tatius," he said, his voice steady as the river, "we are not enemies. Your daughters are not captives, but guests, welcomed to share our hearths. Let us speak, not fight." Titus's gaze did not soften. "You took them under the stars," he replied, his voice low but firm. "You call it welcome, but we call it theft. Return them, and we may yet find peace." The words hung heavy, and the valley seemed to tighten around them. Livia's heart. In a modest Roman home, Livia stood by the door, her twilight eyes fixed on the valley beyond the walls. The air was thick with the scent of cooling stone and fading festival flowers. Gaius, her Roman guide, stood beside her, his face pale but his hand steady on hers. "Your people are here," he said softly. "I will stand with you, whatever comes." Livia's heart was a storm of loyalty and longing. She thought of her village, the stream where lilies bloomed, her brother's laughter, her father's stern warnings. Yet Rome had stirred something new within her. Gaius's kindness, the city's pulse, the dream of a life woven with both peoples, it called to her as strongly as her home.
She stepped outside, the evening air cool against her skin. Other Sabine women gathered, their faces a mix of fear and resolve. Some clutched woven shawls, others whispered prayers to the gods. Livia heard their stories, tales of Roman men who had offered not chains but promises, of homes where they might belong. "They are not cruel," one woman said, her voice trembling, "but my heart aches for the hills." Livia nodded, her own heart torn. "We are neither Sabine nor Roman now, but something new. What will we choose?" She walked to the city's edge, where the walls met the valley. The sight of her people's banners stirred her soul, yet the warmth of Gaius's hand lingered in her memory. She thought of the child she might one day carry, a child of both worlds. "If we fight," she whispered to the wind, "what becomes of that future?" The Tiber's song seemed to answer, its notes soft but unyielding, urging her toward a path she could not yet see. The standoff. In the valley the army stood, Roman shields glinting, Sabine staffs firm. The sun dipped lower, painting the hills in hues of amber and rose. No man moved, no weapon rose, but the air was taut, a thread stretched to breaking. Romulus stepped forward, his voice clear. "Titus, let us walk together," he said. "Let us speak as men who dream of more than war." Titus hesitated, his hand tightening on his staff, then nodded. The two kings met by the Tiber, their men watching, breath held.
"You took our women," Titus said, his voice low but sharp. "You speak of unity, but you acted in shadow." Rome's eyes did not waver. "I sought a future where our peoples are one," he said. "Your daughters are not bound. They chose to stay. Speak with them and see their hearts." Titus's gaze darkened, but a flicker of doubt crossed his face. He had seen the festival's joy, the way some women had smiled with Roman men. Could there be truth in Romu's words? The kings spoke long, their voices rising and falling like the river's flow. Titus demanded his people's return. Romu offered shared rule, a city where Sabines and Romans could stand as equals. The words were heavy, each man's heart torn between pride and hope. Behind them, the armies waited, their shadows lengthening across the valley. The wind carried the scent of earth and water, a reminder of the gods who watched. Whispers of change. In Rome, Livia gathered with the Sabine women, their voices a soft chorus in the fading light. They spoke of their villages, of families left behind, but also of the lives taking root here. One woman, her hands calloused from weaving, spoke of a Roman who had built her a loom. Another, younger, blushed as she described a man who sang to her under the stars. Livia listened, her heart swelling. "We are not prisoners," she said, her voice steady. "But we are not yet home. We must choose what home will be."
She thought of Gaius, his earnest eyes, his dream of a family. She thought of Titus, her king, whose pride was her own. And she thought of the children yet to be born, their blood a bridge between hills. A fire kindled within her, a vision of peace not won by swords but by hearts. She turned to the women, her twilight eyes bright. "If our people fight," she said, "we lose all we might become. We must act." The women nodded, their faces set with quiet courage. They gathered their shawls, their woven ribbons, and stepped toward the valley. Livia led them, her steps firm, her heart pounding. The Tiber sang below, its waters catching the last light, and the hills seemed to lean closer, listening. The eve of decision. As night fell, the valley grew still, the army's fires dotting the darkness like fallen stars. Romu and Titus parted, their words unresolved, but their hearts open to possibility. Romu returned to Rome, his mind heavy. He climbed the Palatine, the city's lights flickering below. Have I asked too much, he wondered, his gaze on the stars, or is this the path to eternity? Titus sat by a fire, his men silent around him. The Sabine hills called to him, their forests a memory of home, but he thought of Livia, of the women who might choose Rome. If they stay, he thought, what becomes of us? He prayed to the gods, his voice low, asking for wisdom in the days to come. Livia lay in her Roman home, the lamp's flame dancing. She saw the valley in her mind, the armies poised, the Tiber flowing between. Tomorrow, she whispered, we will speak. Her heart held both fear and hope, a fragile balance that could shape the dawn.
The stars burn bright over Rome, dear dreamer, as the Tiber weaves its gentle song through the valley. The hills stand silent, holding the breath of a moment that could break or bind two peoples. Let the tale carry you to its heart, where courage rises like a flame in the night. The dawn of confrontation. The first light of dawn crept over the 7 hills, painting the valley in hues of gold and rose. The Tiber flowed steady, its waters catching the sun's rays like scattered jewels, while the fields swayed with dew-kissed grass. The air was cool, scented with earth and the faint memory of festival flowers, but a heavy stillness hung over the land. In the valley between Rome's walls and the Sabine hills, 2 armies stood, their shadows long and sharp. Roman shields gleamed, their edges worn but resolute. Sabine staffs stood firm, their tips glinting in the morning light. No sword was drawn, no cry raised, yet the silence spoke of a moment poised on the edge of fate. King Titus Tatius stood at the head of his people, his broad frame steady as the oaks of his homeland. His silver-streaked beard caught the dawn's glow, and his eyes, sharp and unyielding, fixed on the Roman lines. His heart was a storm of pride and pain, the loss of his women a wound that burned. "Romu," he called, his voice rolling across the valley, "this is the hour of truth. Return our kin, or let the gods judge our cause." His men gripped their staffs, their faces set, but Titus's heart held a flicker of hope. He remembered the festival's laughter, the shared wine. Could there be a path beyond this divide? Romus stood before his men, his crimson cloak stirring in the breeze. The Tiber song was a quiet anchor, but his heart trembled with the weight of his dream. He saw Titus across the field, a kin whose strength mirrored his own. "I sought unity," he thought, "but have I broken more than I built?" He stepped forward, hands raised, voice clear. "Titus Tatius, we are not foes. Your daughters live among us, not as captives, but as kin. Let them speak, and let their hearts guide us." His words were steady, but doubt gnawed at him. Would the women choose Rome, or would they call for war? The armies stood, breath held, as the sun climbed higher. The valley was a canvas of light and shadow, the hills watching like ancient guardians. The Tiber flowed on, its song a whisper of peace amid the tension.
The air carried the scent of cooling embers and fresh bread, but their hearts were heavy with the valley's silence. Livia's twilight eyes shone with resolve, her hands clasped tightly. She had spent the night speaking with the women, hearing their fears, their hopes. Some longed for the hills, for the streams and forests of home. Others spoke of Roman men who had offered kindness, of a city that could be theirs. Livia's own heart was torn. Gaius's gentle words echoed, but so did her brother's laughter, her father's voice. She thought of the child she might bear, a child of both Sabine and Roman blood. "If we fight," she whispered, "that child will inherit only ashes." The women nodded, their faces a mix of fear and strength. They had woven ribbons into their hair, symbols of their hills, but their steps were firm as they moved toward the valley. Livia led them, her heart pounding like a drum. "We are the bridge," she thought, "and we must stand." They passed through Rome's streets, past silent markets and watchful eyes. Children paused their games, merchants lowered their wares, and Roman women joined them, their faces soft with understanding. The Sabine women carried no weapons, only their courage, their robes flowing like rivers. Some held infants, born in the months since the festival. Others clasped woven shawls, gifts from their new homes. Livia's hand brushed the ribbon in her hair, a piece of her village, and she prayed to the gods for strength.
The women stand. The valley grew still as the Sabine women appeared, stepping between the armies like a tide of color and light. The Romans parted, their shields lowering. The Sabines stepped back, their staffs resting. Livia stood at the center, her twilight eyes bright with tears but steady. The infant in her arms, a child of Gaius, stirred softly, its breath a quiet promise. Around her, the women formed a line, their faces radiant with purpose. The Tiber's song seemed to rise, a gentle counterpoint to the silence. Livia raised her voice, clear and strong, yet soft as the dawn. "Hear us, kings and warriors," she said, her words carrying across the valley. "We are no longer only Sabines or Romans. We are mothers, wives, sisters. These children," she lifted her infant, its tiny hand reaching for the light, "are the blood of both our peoples. Will you spill that blood to avenge a moment that has passed? We chose to stay, to build, to dream. Let us weave a future, not tear it apart." The armies stood frozen, their eyes on the women. Titus's hand fell from his staff, his gaze softening as he saw Livia, his cousin, her strength a mirror of his own. He thought of the hills, of the fires his people lit, but also of the laughter at the festival, the hope in her eyes. Romulus stepped forward, his heart swelling with gratitude. He saw not just Livia, but all the women, their courage a flame that could light Rome's path. They speak for us all, he thought, his doubt easing like mist under the sun. The women's voices joined Livia's, a chorus of pleas and promises. "We are your kin," one said, holding her child.
"We are your future," said another, her hand on a Roman's arm. The valley seemed to breathe, the tension loosening like a knot undone. The Tiber sang, its notes weaving through the silence, and the hills leaned closer as if to listen.
The path to peace. Titus stepped toward Livia, his eyes searching hers. "You have chosen Rome," he asked, his voice low, a mix of pain and pride. Livia met his gaze, her voice steady. "I have chosen a home where our peoples can be one. Join us, my king, and let us build together." Titus's heart wavered, then steadied. He saw the children, the women, the truth in their eyes. He turned to Romu, his hand extended. "Let us speak as brothers, and forge a peace that endures." Romu clasped Titus's hand, their grip firm, their eyes meeting with new understanding. "Rome will be ours," Romu said. "Sabine and Roman, one city, one heart." The armies cheered, a sound that rose like the wind through the hills. Shields were lowered, staffs set aside, and the valley filled with voices, not of war, but of hope. The women stepped forward, joining hands with Romans and Sabines, their children laughing in the grass. Livia stood beside Gaius, her infant cradled between them. She looked to the Tiber, its waters bright with the dawn, and felt her heart settle. "This is home," she thought, the weight of her fears lifting. Titus and Romu walked together, their voices low, planning a city where both peoples could thrive. The hills seemed to nod, their slopes glowing, and the gods themselves seemed to smile.
The Tale of the Sabine Dawn, Part 6. The dawn breaks wide over Rome, dear dreamer, its light weaving through the 7 hills like a promise kept. The Tiber sings a final verse, its waters carrying the hopes of 2 peoples bound as one. Let the tale guide you to its close, where hearts find harmony and a city rises eternal. The light of unity. The valley between Rome's walls and the Sabine hills glowed under a midday sun, its rays painting the grass in shades of gold and emerald. The Tiber flowed steady, its waters shimmering like a thread of silver, reflecting the sky's endless blue. Wildflowers nodded in the breeze, their petals catching light, and the air was sweet with the scent of earth and blooming laurel. The armies, once poised for conflict, stood mingled now, Roman shields resting beside Sabine staffs, their bearers sharing bread and wine. The hills watched, their slopes soft with warmth, as if the gods themselves blessed this moment. Romulus and Titus Tatius stood by the Tiber, their hands still clasped from the vow of peace. Romulus's crimson cloak caught the wind, his dark eyes bright with relief. "Rome will be our city," he said, his voice resonant, yet soft like the river's song. "Sabine and Roman, one blood, one dream." Titus nodded, his silver-streaked beard glinting, his gaze steady. "Our hills will not forget," he replied, "but they will sing of this day, a union forged not by swords,
but by hearts. His heart, once heavy with anger, felt lighter now, lifted by the sight of his people standing with Romans, their voices a shared chorus.
Livia stood among the women, her twilight eyes shining as she cradled her infant. Gaius was at her side, his hand gentle on her shoulder, his smile warm as the sun. The Sabine women mingled with their kin, some embracing brothers and fathers, others introducing Roman men who had become more than strangers. The valley echoed with laughter, with tears of reunion, with the soft cries of children born of both worlds. Livia looked to the hills, their peaks glowing, and thought of her village, the stream, the lilies, her brother Caius. She would see them again, but Rome was her home now, a place where her child could grow strong. The women's courage had turned the tide, their voices a bridge across the divide. They moved through the crowd, their robes of saffron and blue blending with Roman cloaks of crimson and white. One woman, her hands calloused from weaving, showed her brother a blanket she had made in Rome. Another, younger, laughed as she chased a child through the grass, a Roman boy at her side. Livia's heart swelled. We are the roots of this city, she thought, and from us it will grow eternal. The forging of Rome. As the sun climbed higher, Romulus and Titus called their people to the Forum, a clearing where the ancient oak stretched its branches like a canopy. The air was warm, scented with pine and the faint smoke of new fires. Romans and Sabines gathered, their faces bright with hope. Romulus raised his hands, his voice carrying like a gentle wind. "Today we are one," he said. "Rome will rise not on conquest, but on unity. Let us build together homes, hearths, a future for our children." Titus stepped beside him, his presence steady as the hills. "The Sabines bring our strength, our songs, our blood. Rome will be our legacy."
The crowd cheered, their voices rising to the sky. Men clasped hands, women shared embraces, and children ran through the forum, their laughter a promise of tomorrow. Plans were made, new homes to be built, fields to be sown, temples to honor the gods of both peoples. The Tiber flowed nearby, its song a blessing, and the 7 hills seemed to stand taller, their slopes alive with possibility. Livia walked with Gaius to a garden near the Forum, where herbs grew thick and fragrant. They sat beneath an olive tree, its leaves whispering in the breeze. Their child slept in Livia's arms, its breath soft as a prayer. "This is our Rome," Gaius said, his voice low, "a city where our son will know both hills and river." Livia smiled, her heart at peace. She thought of her brother Caius, who would visit soon, and of her father, who might one day see this city as home. "We built this," she said, her voice a whisper, "not with stone, but with hope." Titus walked the streets of Rome, his steps slow but sure. The city was rough, its walls uneven, its paths worn, but it pulsed with life. He saw Sabine women laughing with Romans, children playing under the oak, men planning a new market. His heart, once torn, felt whole. He thought, "This is not betrayal, but a new song for our people." He looked to the Palatine where Romulus stood and nodded. They would rule together, 2 kings for 1 city, their wisdom a foundation for eternity.
As evening fell, Rome glowed with the light of hearts, their fires dotting the hills like stars brought to earth. The Tiber sang its endless song, its waters weaving through the city, carrying dreams to the sea. The 7 hills stood as guardians, their slopes cloaked in twilight, and the air was alive with the scents of bread, wine, and blooming flowers. Romans and Sabines gathered in the forum, sharing a feast under the stars. Musicians played, their flutes and lyres weaving melodies that echoed the festival of Neptune, now a memory of unity, not division. Romulus stood with Titus, their shoulders touching as they watched their people. "We dreamed of this," Romulus said, his voice soft. "A city that will stand beyond our days." Titus nodded, his eyes on the horizon. "Our children will sing of this, of the day 2 peoples became one." They raised cups of wine, their toast a vow to the future. Livia sat with Gaius, her child asleep between them. She looked to the stars, their light a mirror of the fires below. "This is home," she thought, her heart full. The Sabine hills called to her still, but Rome was her place now, a city born of courage and love. She whispered a prayer to the gods, thanking them for guiding her path. The feast continued, voices rising in song, laughter mingling with the Tiber's flow. The children danced, their steps light, their futures bright. The hills seemed to sing, their voices carried on the wind, a promise that Rome would endure, its heart forged in the unity of 2 peoples. And so, dear dreamer, the tale of the Sabine dawn finds its close, its echoes carried on the winds that sweep through Rome's hills. It speaks of a time when hearts, though divided, found harmony in love. It tells of courage, of women who stood as bridges, of kings who chose peace over pride. Rome rose not from conquest, but from unity, its stones laid by hands joined in hope. Let this story linger as you drift to sleep, a reminder that love can mend even the deepest divides, that unity can rise from discord, and that a single heart's courage can light the way for generations. Sleep now under the same stars that watched Rome's birth, and may your dreams be as warm as its hearths, as gentle as the Tiber's song, as eternal as the city itself.